It's time to talk fantasy football. It's time to let them know. Where you let us crunch the numbers while you crush the competition. So grab your playbooks and crack a cold one, because here's your hosts, Teak and Baney.
Welcome back, guys, with another episode of the podcast. Here with Badge and Baney in the new year, 2024. The fantasy season has come to an end, so hopefully you guys cashed in throughout the year with us, whether it's our bets, starts and sits, our boom or bust, whatever it may be, boys. I know it was a down year for me, made playoffs and everything. Didn't cash home no money, though. A lot of injuries for me in playoffs. I don't know about you boys. How'd you guys do?
Exactly the same fate, man. I took a fourth and a second. Second in our very own Let 'Em Know kickoff league that we started this year. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, injuries, man. Rode Keenan Allen all year, and then when it was put up or shut up time, he kind of decided it was time to sit down for a minute. So felt that a lot, and I lost Kamara, unfortunately, as well in this last round. So not a bad year, not a great year, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I made the playoffs 2 out of 3. Got bounced in the first round. One of my leagues, I was top scorer in my 12-man league and just had that off week. My 14-man league, I didn't make the playoffs. I had number 1 overall pick, took Justin Jefferson. So slim pickings from there and went nowhere in that one.
Yep. So what we're going to do, guys, here, we're going to go over the recap. End of the fantasy season, so we're going to do the top 5 at each position. Should we do each position, or we're just going to do top 5 fantasy scores to wrap up the year here? Then we're going to go on to the hits and misses of our takes throughout the year, and then we're going to go to the fantasy next year, the risers and fallers. So let's get right on into it. So right here we have the top 5 for the year here. At number 5, we have Tyreek Hill with 355 fantasy points. CeeDee Lamb, 368. Jalen Hurts, 370. Josh Allen, 386. And McCaffrey, 391. What stands out here, besides McCaffrey, no love for the running backs. I know he had a crazy season. If he didn't have that crazy season, I don't think we would have saw a running back on this list, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'll start. Jalen Hurts being on here. Respectably, if you watch them at all play this year, I wouldn't say he had a great year. However, this just proves you that rushing touchdowns worth that full 6 points. The brotherly shove is live and in full effect, boys. Sniped a bunch of rushing touchdowns from Swift. And yeah, a lot of those rushing yards and rushing touchdowns eliminate a lot of that turnover issues you get with him and Josh Allen. But yeah, man, that the full 6 points for the touchdowns, a whole lot of value out of your quarterback position. It is not surprising that him and Allen are at the top of this list. I will say CeeDee's incredible breakout season. We will talk about that probably later in the show, but worth mentioning, but definitely Jalen right there at number 3. Like to see it.
Yeah, what stands out to me, I mean, you said you don't talk about McCaffrey, but I feel like I got to mention it because I mentioned I had the first overall pick. I wish I would have taken him. So that stands out to me just looking at this list. Same with Allen. It feels like the Bills had that offense didn't look to be the same, but that just shows, like Baney said, those rushing touchdowns are huge in your fantasy league. So, yeah, Allen being at number 2, that's a little bit surprising, base, if you just pulled this up halfway through the year to me.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. So let's go on to our hits and misses here. Bad, you want to start us off?
Yeah.
What's one miss that you had this season?
So
anything. It could be bets, anything.
So my one miss that stands out, and I think Baney kind of agreed with me a little bit here. I don't know if he went to the full extent that I did, but my one thing was I thought Justin Fields was going to win league MVP. So that was my stretch for that. But it was a similar last year situation, second half of the year. I mean, he worked out, but if you've been playing like that all year and that team would have been clicking, who knows? But yeah, that's one miss I had.
Yeah, going around the horn with misses, I share a lot of that with Fields. I really do. Yeah, they're. I don't know. I hate to say it because I feel like we're going to be right back in this seat next year talking about his rushing ability and everything. They trapped us into it, but I still don't think you were crazy having that take in the offseason. I don't think I was crazy for setting them where I set them. It's just unfortunately, Chicago, and they're probably going to do it again next year. But
unless Teak wants him in Atlanta, I know he's pushing for it.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. But there you go.
Yeah, my miss. I think my major miss. I was very confident on this being just a good take this offseason, and I'm going to eat my words. And that was George Kittle. I had a lot of praise for George Kittle, the football player, not necessarily a fantasy contributor. However, Brock Purdy is very real, very much here. I think it was a single season record for passing yards for a 49er. And yeah, George Kittle looked incredible all year. Ayuk looked incredible all year. Debo just, another solid year out of that entire offense. So Purdy made a fool out of me. I wasn't quite sure we were going to get all of this production. There's a lot of mouths to feed, but they divvied it up well. And Kittle, where did he finish at here at tight end? He finished at tight end 5. So I thought his ADP was way too high this year, and it was proven wrong. It was really good value where you got Kittle this year. So
to touch on that, I did take Pitts over Kittle in our draft take. Remember that?
Oh wow, yeah,
that's tough.
I mean, I hear a lot of things about Pitts already. How they're comparing Pitts. I don't know if you guys remember this defensive end on the Falcons, Vic Beasley. They're comparing him as the offensive Vic Beasley. I don't think that's the case. I think so. It's just coaching and QB play. I really do.
It's a whole lot of art, man. You don't get 1,000 yards receiving your rookie year on accident. You don't do that not being talented. It's
with an aged Matt Ryan. Like, I don't see it. But Kittle again has another great season. Only 3 points off from Evan Ingram from being that number 4 seed there for him. So that's crazy. Does it year after year, and that's going to go right on in my misses here. So my miss, I believe it won't live up to the hype of the previous season. I had Travis Etienne. The dude balled out pretty well this season. I think he was running back, showing running back 2 for the year. So that was a big miss on my part. And I thought Tank Bigsby was going to be that guy to break in and split that 50-50, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of those shows together this off season. I wasn't very high on this Jacksonville team really at all. I ended up being on the opposite end of the Evan Ingram train. You really liked him. I didn't. That kind of flip-flop there. But I think you and I both shared some fades for ETN this offseason. And at the end of the year, he did kind of putter out a little bit. But, man, he was strong, especially full PPR leagues. He was really strong for most of this season. So hats off to you if you rode that ride with ETN this season.
Yeah, especially too because I think running backs drop down the ladder, especially this year with all this wide receiver talent. But yeah, I was in the same boat. I thought Tank was going to take some of those touches away, and they just kept feeding ETN. So great year for him.
All right. Does anybody have another miss to go around, or you want to go straight into the hits here?
Let's go positive.
I kind of have just full accountability. We did our stacks episode, and I kind of had a hit and miss 50-50 split. My stack was Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. I thought that was going to be a great stack. Turns out Austin Eckler was not going to hold up his end of the bargain this year. think he played through a high ankle sprain all season. I think he just kind of fell off a cliff, which is tough because Keenan Allen, just monster season. Keenan Allen, unfortunately, didn't play the last now going to be 3 weeks of the season. Finished at wide receiver 6. I think he would have been rivaling the top 3 guys there if he would have played these last few weeks. But yeah, I think that's a 50-50 split. But I did say Eckler and Keenan together. Got half of that.
Yeah. But yeah, especially when a team fires their head coach mid-season, usually means some of those guys' numbers dropped as well. So yeah, Eckler, very disappointing year for him.
Yeah, and just to go on, I have one more miss I wanted to talk about too. Under my breakouts, we talk about breakout players, and I truly believe he could have had a huge season, maybe flirted with that top 10 receiving, was George Pickens. He's sitting at wide receiver 22 for the year, and that's with 3 different quarterbacks. So I think Badge maybe can attest to this. If Mason was in there for the full season, when we had more of a gunslinging Pittsburgh offense, see more of George Pickens. I don't know what you think, but he's been balling out with Mason lately.
Well, bulk of those touchdowns and yards have come in the last 3 weeks?
Yep.
I mean, I wonder what that – I wasn't paying attention to Pickens, where his ranking was season long, but I feel like he was down there a little bit prior to this, I don't want to say emergence, but like this kind of resurgence from this Steelers offense. So he definitely did a lot of work for fantasy owners these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think that Rudolph, too, came in there. I think it helps that he came in there with a terrible Steelers offense statistically. Felt like he had nothing to lose, so he took advantage of that. This leads me to a question. I had it written down. I figure I'll jump in now that we're talking about Pickens. So Pickens value next year. Do you guys think that stock's coming up based on these last couple weeks?
I don't know how to answer that question because truthfully, I feel like I've completely written off the Steelers offense from my own personal draft board. And that's just simply just the quarterback situation is just a mess for me. And if the quarterback situation is a mess, then I tend not to want to have any part of those wide receiver rooms. So like personally, like I feel this way about Garrett Wilson too. Love Garrett Wilson, the player. However, quarterback room's in shambles. I don't know how to really evaluate the talent elsewhere. So that's kind of how I feel. I feel like Pickens, I mean, incredible talent, but what do you do with this offense? What does the new coordinator look like next year? There's a lot of questions that I need answered before I can confidently give you an answer on that. But it's definitely a question that's going to be like talked about on pretty much every show anywhere this offseason, I think.
So it sounds like you might be able to get some value out of him last year if people think about that too. Next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm on the same boat too, where it all comes down. He kind of took my answer from me. It all comes down to QB play. Am I going to shy away from him? No, it depends on where I'm going to get him. But just like he says, if that QB room's how it is, I still think he's going to go in later rounds. Like I said, if Mason Rudolph was in there, we got to see a full season with their version of a gunslinger, then his value might have hopped up here pretty good. But let's go into the hits. What's one of your hits you like the most, Badge, this year?
All right, so my hit, I got to do it. My man, Jordan Love in my deep dives. So he finished at QB5. I know it was a deep dive segment, but you guys thought I was crazy. QB5. I didn't think he was going to go that much. It was just a deep dive segment going deep. But the guy has the scroll here too. I had this next to me all year. So QB5, that surprised me. Baney, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just exactly what you said. We laughed at you when you were talking about Jordan Love. We were just like, yeah, come on. Like, the wide receivers were abysmal, we thought. Ended up having a lot of value there. The tight ends, they just kept being fantasy relevant all year. Tucker Kraft these last few weeks specifically. Like, Jordan Love just found a way to make it work. And I'll tell you what, he had a decent little year. And what do you do? 3,800 passing yards and 30 touchdowns. Would have been the greatest single season quarterback performance of any Bears quarterback in their franchise. He owns the Bears. He's the new Aaron Rodgers, owner of the Bears. You know, the Bears, all those guys, they thought, you know, Rodgers was gone, the Packers will be dead, and he's already put up a season that's would have been the greatest in their franchise history. So looks like the Packers are going to be rolling again with another quarterback for the future, and it's crazy.
They're flirting with playoffs this year too.
Yeah, man, they just don't die. There's some teams, they just find talent in places, and this is one of those teams. They just I don't know, historically he'll be a Hall of Famer like what they've spit out. You know, it's way too early to tell, but impressive year for Jordan Love, man. But
Baney, what do you got for us?
I have a couple that I'm really proud of in particular this year. We don't need to really discuss it too much because they're kind of chalk talk, like Amon-Ra St. Brown and the Gibbs stack. I was pretty high about that. A lot of people thought I was crazy just because Gibbs, the rookie, we didn't know. And for beginning of the year, it didn't look like it was going to pan out, but ended up being pretty decent by the end. However, I want to talk about Rashee Rice. We did our rookie wide receiver episode. I mean, we talked about the same guys that most of these shows talked about, you know, the Jordan Addisons, Zay Flowers. But we did make a special note to mention Rashee Rice in that episode, and I'm very happy we did. Wide receiver 21 on the year. I mean, he finished above those guys, above Addison, above Zay Flowers. He finished above Garrett Wilson. Just other names, Jalen Waddle, Terry McLaurin, Sutton, Tyler Lockett. And, I mean, can't really mention Justin Jefferson. That injury is kind of brutal. But, yeah, and right behind, 4 points behind Chris Olave. So ADP-wise, Rashee Rice was free in every league you possibly could have found. And all he did was put up 213 fantasy points on the year. So, like I said, you got almost Chris Olave value for 100% free. And, yeah, we talked about him. And, unfortunately, he didn't really get a whole lot of usage at the beginning of the year, or else I think these numbers would have been a heck of a lot better, honestly. He's flirting with 1,000 yards receiving. He's got 79 receptions. And, like I said, he was not really sniffing the field. He was buried behind Kadarius Toney. He was buried behind Sky Moore. Those are guys that are just not even playing anymore. This guy's completely taking over the wide receiver one role. Massive opportunity moving forward in fantasy next year. So Rashee Rice, chalk it up. We'll talk about him in the future again, but I'm happy about that one.
Yeah, heck of a value there. Like you said, you pretty much got him for free. Touching on that, I was kind of big on Sky Moore. That was a flop. So, yeah, Rice, Mahomes seemed to find his guy. His stock is definitely going up next year. So, he's looking good.
So, a question for you guys. I've actually seen this on X. They're saying Rashee, I don't know who you guys would take. They're saying they'd rather take Rashee Rice over Puka next year. Your thoughts on that?
This is something I'm throwing around in my brain, not specifically this instance, but evaluating Puka's value for next year. I feel like a lot of people are going to be super high on Puka, and to get him in drafts, I think you're going to have to reach because I think people are just going to eat him up. However, most of his production this year came prior to Kupp, and prior to Kupp being 100%. Because once Kupp was back fully and integrated, they both kind of took turns being the guy. They both didn't blow up together at really any point this year. Rashee Rice moving forward, I think, is going to be even more valuable year after year. He's going to be wide receiver one unrivaled. We're not going to talk about Kadarius Toney in the offseason this year. We're not going to talk about Sky Moore in the offseason this year. I don't think Valdez-Scantling has a role on that team. So, therefore, I think Rashee Rice, personally, I think has more value. Not to say he's a better player than Puka by any means. However, I just think role, opportunities, target share, I think there's going to be more of it.
Yeah, who would I rather take between the player? I got to say Puka, but the value in fantasy drafts, I think Puka's story is going to, and what he did this year is going to make people grab him early and quick. So, yeah, you might be able to sneak out a better value for Rashee Rice. So, in fantasy drafts.
I'm glad you asked this question though. I've been dying to see where he's going to be ranked this offseason, where his average ADP is going to be. I think it's going to be high. I really do.
Yeah. I think
But
you might be able to get Rice rounds later.
moving on here, my hit, one I'm most proud of, obviously, I'm going to start claiming it. The tight end guru. I got Sam Laporta, finished first overall in tight ends, over huge names: Kelsey, Hawkinson, Kittle, Njoku, and even that guy you wanted to take ahead of him, Dalton Kincaid. So that's my biggest thing. I think we're going to talk about him later on here in the episode, I think, as well. But that's my big hit I like as well.
Yeah, dude. I just absolute smoke show Laporta this year, man. Hawkinson was there in that offense, getting that target share, doing all that stuff, and they seemingly replaced him, and that offense looks great. I think they hit a home run with Laporta. I can't wait to see moving forward, another year. What was your quote all off season? Takes a tight end 2-3 years to really flourish in an offense. We're getting tight end 1 value right here, right now. I'm curious to know if he's going to change how tight ends are looked moving forward in drafts in fantasy value. Brock Bowers coming in next year. Our team's going to take him earlier, hoping to get what Laporta did. I don't know. Laporta just maybe he benefited. He basically was a wide receiver 2 in that offense. I mean, when you think it's just him and Amon-Ra really all season. So great value, great call by you.
Yeah, great hit on Laporta. I mean, I think he surprised us all, especially tight end 1. That's wild seeing that connection, and they definitely replaced their Hawkinson. So I think he's going to have a better year next year. I don't think we're going to see a sophomore slump at all.
And what's crazy is he's sitting at 45th overall. So where you drafted him in your drafts, even if he was a free agent, and some if you're in like deeper league or smaller league, excuse me, he was that 4th round value at the end of the season where you drafted him. That's crazy.
Yeah, if you're in a dynasty league or a keeper league, and you get to roll him over, your team is already in the positive. You are already in the green for next year and for years to come potentially.
Yeah, this tight end position was tough for me all year. I was spot starting constantly. So if you were lucky enough to grab him.
You have another one, Badge, another hit you wanted to go over?
No, that was the only one I had that we talked about. I joined late in the season.
Oh, yeah. Baney?
Oh, no, I did have Nico.
You did. Yeah, you banged that drum. You banged that drum all season.
I know Baney was sick of me talking to him. He had me on mute some episodes, but Nico Collins stepped up big, and I think big part of that is CJ Stroud and his play. But yeah, Nico, I took him in 2 out of my 3 leagues, got him late. He was in my starting lineup all year, other than he was hurt a couple games. But yeah, Nico.
So there you go.
Yeah, I think in particular, I am very proud of our handcuffs episode that we did. I mean, obviously before draft season. Number 1 handcuff for the season for me was Jerome Ford. Crazy, very unpredictable that you would have got to use him as much as you did with Chubb's injury that early in the season. That being said, Jerome Ford, he finished with an RB14 finish this year. And it would have been higher if they didn't bring in Kareem Hunt and just have him just be a touchdown merchant. Kareem Hunt finished with like 8 touchdowns or something, or 9 touchdowns on the season. Jerome only gets 4. But that being said, he still almost has 1,000 yards rushing. He's sitting right about 800. Just great value out of a handcuff, out of somebody you didn't even predict to really be playing when you drafted him. And then the other guy being Zamir White in these last few weeks. I mean, Zamir White's been crazy valuable. Again, just with Josh Jacobs up in the air all season, whether or not he was going to play come off season. Ended up waiting a lot longer than you wanted to, but I mean, Zamir White's still sitting at 340 yards rushing. Just a nice little 60 points in the couple weeks that he's played and 206 points for Jerome Ford. So for guys you weren't expecting to play, handcuffs ended up giving great value. So
Yeah, if you followed and watched the episodes, Jerome Ford, I'm in a 14-man league, so you got to look. T can tell you, you got to look for these handcuffs. I was lucky enough. I took Jerome Ford late in my 14-man league. He was my starter the whole year. Helped me tremendously. I don't know if any of you guys do a 14-manner. They are tough, especially injuries and all that. So you got to hit on some of these. So great episode, great call, Baney.
Yep. And moving on I got a couple ones I want to go over. They're the hits of the sits, I want to call them, or guys you shouldn't even drafted to begin with. And I know Baney's going to know one of these. Darius Toney, wide receiver, 106. Told him to leave him off your list. He's not going to make Mahomes lovable wide receiver target. And also Miles Sanders, running back 51. Everybody thought his boom year in Philly was going to translate over to this Carolina team. It didn't. Looks like he's now sitting at where? Back up to Chuba for the season. And they might go elsewhere, I think, down the line in the draft. So those two I'm proud of not even making your roster.
yeah, I was thrilled when we talked about those guys in particular. Kadarius has been memed to death. They posted, all the player incentives these last week of the season where they have to have 3 catches, 5 catches, 40 yards, hit their incentives. Somebody made a meme of Kadarius that he's 3 drops away from hitting his $1 million incentive kicker for his contract. Guy's just been it's just been a train wreck for Kadarius. And yeah, dude, Miles Sanders, Eagles fans anywhere could have told you he's just a product of what that offensive line did, and the fact that Eagles were blowing teams out at halftime and just ran the ball the whole second half of all those games. He just was never that guy. He ended up having one season that, a lot of people bought in. It just was never the case. So, but yeah, dude, you saved a lot of people's seasons if they listened. So,
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was. I thought you might be able to find a little value if you grabbed them late, but that was bad. So hopefully you did stay away and you listened.
But we're going to move on here to the risers and falls of next year here. We're going to start with the falls here. Who's falling in next year's draft? Badge.
Baney, go ahead.
So we kind of talked about this, Badge and I, when you were dealing with your life or death illness, thoughts and prayers in the chat for Teak. We kind of talked about like little foreshadowing for this episode, and both of mine right now, my first ones anyway, are quarterbacks. And it's Trevor Lawrence and Danny Dimes. Danny Dimes is always like your kind of low end access to a rushing quarterback. I just don't think that he's going to have anything that looks like value moving forward. I think the offense is one of few that I'm just not going to touch in fantasy at all. And Trevor Lawrence, man, nobody talks about just how bad I think his play has been these last few years. I've touched on it a handful of times these last few weeks specifically, but yeah, just a lot of turnovers, a lot of inconsistency. That offense should be a lot better than it's been. And it's those two specifically, they seem to have a big cult following. I feel like if you're in a league, you have a guy that loves Danny Dimes. If you also probably know somebody that likes Trevor Lawrence. I just don't think any of those guys moving forward are going to have the value that even in late in rounds. I took in our sleeper league, I took Goff second to last round, third to last round. And Goff ended up giving us a QB8 performance this year. Trevor Lawrence should be able to do that for you. He's never going to be with that guy, unfortunately. So those are guys I'm already warning, get off the tracks for next year. So
Yeah, and I was one who was I was big on Trevor Lawrence this year. I took him in the league. My 14-manner didn't pay off, so I think he's going to fall as well. I do have a question. that is I've been wondering about. Where is Justin Jefferson getting drafted next year with his the QB situation? No one knows with Cousins, and his injury. Where's he going? Is he still in the top 5? I think he is.
I think so. I think there's some people you just can't look away from, and I think that he's one of those guys. Truthfully, the talent is ridiculous. I feel like Kirk's going to be back, to be honest with you. Just my feeling personally.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys. Someone was talking about it. They was going to drop to the second round. I'm like, there's no way. So I just want to get your. I still think he's a top 5 pick.
All is going to be silenced about anybody going 1-1 though. Like it's going to be McCaffrey. No matter. Like this was the first year I think that it was like it's going to be Jefferson. It's going to be Jamar, and I was one of the Jamar guys, and I think CMC is undisputed, man. But T, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be 1-1 or even 1-2. I'm going to go a step further, and I think the first wide receiver off the board is going to be CD coming up. That's my guess. I think. But so yeah, under the falling, you can say that's a fall because he's a high priority, but he might even drop. I would say 7-8 maybe. Depends on these running backs, dude. Some teams love drafting running backs first just to get those out of the way because there's tons of receivers out there, which is crazy. I know people like to do the no running back thing. I didn't. I went McCaffrey, and it paid off for me. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
I am a big proponent of the 0 RB build, and it's just simply because you can get guys that just have crazy wide receiver upside. Like I spent, unfortunately, Keenan killed me, but I had Amon-Ra St. Brown, Keenan Allen, and Jamar because Jamar was a keeper that transitioned over. So I had 3 guys that were top 10 guys looking right now for wide receivers. And then I wasn't fortunate enough in this league, but if you were fighting with Fab and you were able to pick up, say, Kyron Williams, then you just added, a top tier running back just straight off the street to a crazy wide receiver build. It's crazy, but a lot of teams this year, I think, were saved by the free agent waiver wire pickups this year.
Or I'm going to play devil's advocate here. You could spin it on its head here. Breece Hall was what second, third round, ended up running back number 4. So
on what I would consider a not great year.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
On a terrible offense.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were skewed by that Dalvin Cook pickup.
And you can even okay. Well, if you want to say that as well, Travis Etienne. We just talked about him. Same thing. Running back 2. It's crazy. It's just I don't know. Yeah, there's going to be a lot more. I would say wide receivers going to be up there points wise than running backs. But those running backs that you can find that do both rushing and catching, I think hold more value in my opinion.
Breece Hall, I just looked. Breece Hall had 7 weeks of fewer than 11 fantasy points this year and still managed to have an RB4 finish. The blow up weeks, week 2, 0.9 points.
And finished 24th overall.
Yeah, week 3, 3.7 points. Week 15, 2.8 points. Week 16, 43. Week 17, 27. And that's a second-year player, folks. It's going to give you something to talk about next year. It really is. But where are we going next? Who is next?
That was your fault?
Mine was Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence.
So I have a couple guys on my list. I didn't know how many you guys wanted to do, but I want to know where you guys think these guys are falling to round-wise. Calvin Ridley went second, early third in a lot of leagues. Do you think he drops past 5, 6?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if I were to take him, I would still consider it high at 5. I just think that there's going to be a lot of talent coming into the league this year. And I think a lot of guys that were waiver wire wide receivers have done enough to be more valuable than him, i.e. Jaden Reed. These rookie receivers this year, you're not going to get Zay Flowers as late as you did this year. You're not going to get, Jordan Addison that late. Like, Calvin Ridley's been surpassed in my eyes by a lot of these guys, I think.
Yeah, I think 5's a good spot for him, unless you're in a deeper league, 12 or 14. But yeah, depends on T-Law.
All right, there's another name for you, Austin Eckler.
I'm
1 to 3.
going to virtue to say it's not even a player I'm going to target next year. I never thought I'd be saying that against a guy I would consider PPR GOAT, to be honest with you. But what's the offense look like? What's the coaching situation look like? Is he going to be a casualty of war? The running back cliff. Did he fall off it? Is the ankle right? I don't know. It's a lot of uncertainty on a player that went in the first round of every single draft this year. PPR running backs, I think that there's a lot of value elsewhere. And I'm hoping to not be any part of that Austin Eckler ride next year.
Yeah, I'm not going to give up on him completely. I mean, I think the Chargers are going to have a bounce back year in that offense. Him especially, getting Herbert back. Herbert tends to give him some dump offs. I think 3 would be my target area.
Okay. And last one, big name here. Started off the season hot. I would say, let's see here. Right before the bye at week 9, he faded big time, but he still finished at number 2 in his position. Travis Kelce.
Oh, it's not where I thought we were going with this. Yeah. I mean, you know who traded for him right about that same time? This guy. I did not get the super awesome hot hands tight end one that we were all promised. I made a couple moves and just did not pan out. That being said, he's still somehow going to muster out a 1,000-yard receiving season this year. But yeah, I don't know. He's definitely not going to be a first-round guy next year. There's just zero chance. He's looked really slow specifically.
Early, late second?
I don't know, man.
Maybe early third?
He looks slow because of Taylor Swift. I think they're going to be done next year. They're going to break up. I think he's going to get back to his ways. I'm going to say second round. I mean, the tight end position is a tough one to fill.
I think Laporta is definitely going to hold his value, right? I mean, Hawkinson's kind of I don't know where you're going to get Hawkinson with this ACL injury. I don't know what that's going to look like next year. Evan Ingram, I don't think he's going to hold the tight end 4 value. I just don't. Kittle, everybody loves Kittle. Here's where it gets interesting. Trey McBride, I love Trey McBride, and I think he's going to be another year better. I think that offense is going to be better next year. Kyler's going to be their QB1. I think they announced that he is the franchise. They're not going after a quarterback. Just paint the scenario. Cleveland re-signs Flacco. Keep Flacco as QB1. Where's Njoku go? Where's Njoku go now? There's no way he doesn't get valued higher than he's probably ever been coming in next year.
Okay, so I'm going to play the other side of this coin because I see where this is going.
Mike just had a stroke. You're going
to tell me they're going to play the old cup of Joe.
No, I don't. I just was laughing about it. I just think that Njoku is going to be valued much higher than before. I think we are going to have a real discussion about tight end values next year. Right now, I don't know personally. I think this is a great question by you, and I just do not know where he is going to be valued next year. I don't. Another year older? I don't know.
Yeah, I still think I'm not giving up on Kelce either. I think that's another Chiefs offense or another team that kind of look different, you know.
It'll be his 11th year in the season. Time is undefeated.
I am going to throw a curveball at you. Stephon Diggs. Where are you taking Stephon Diggs next year? Because through most of the season, he was the number one targeted wide receiver in the NFL. And you and I were on different ends of this at the beginning of the year because I thought there was a chance he was going to not end this season on Buffalo's roster because of how things were in the offseason. He had a great first half of this year, and then he's hit 8 straight weeks without 100 yards, a handful of wide receiver 50 or worse performances. Did not end the season strong. If you watch Bills games, he's off the field on third downs a lot. Not stuff you really want to see out of your wide receiver one, and not necessarily stuff you want to see out of a guy you drafted in the first couple of rounds. So do you guys think it's going to be a player that all is forgiven come off season and we're excited to have him next year, or is this something that's going to stick in your brain?
So that's a tough one. I'm glad you brought that up. I think like you said, I don't know if he's happy there or what was going on. I heard different reports and see how he was acting. I think it's honestly going to depend how they finish in the playoffs, if they make the playoffs, and see where his head's at, really. Because past 2 years, he's been a huge fantasy value wide receiver, and then, like you said, 7-8 games, not even 100 yards. So I don't know. I really don't with that one. I'm kind of curious to see, though.
100 catches, over 1,000 yards, ATDs. He's still going to be back end 1, early 2, in my eyes. He finished still wide receiver 9 in a down year. This is his worst year since 2019, where he scored 208 fantasy points. He's at 258 this season. So since 2019, he hasn't seen nothing lower. So I'm not counting Diggs out. Moving forward.
I could see round 2. I can go there.
DJ Moore at 1,300 yards this year. How about Thielen cracked 1,000?
Is that your riser? Are we moving to risers?
No, that's definitely going to be – that should have been on Badge's hit segment, dude. I tell you what, he was the only one banging that drum, and God, I can't believe he had 1,000 yards.
Father Time. That should be his nickname.
Mostert. He had a lot of tread, though.
He has 6 less yards receiving than Garrett Wilson this year.
I took Garrett Wilson in the second on the wrap.
But let's move on to the risers, since we're just naming off names here, Benny.
Yeah. Jaden Reed, I think, is a guy who went from being completely unknown to, he outperformed the last 6-7 weeks of the season. He outperformed Devontae Adams. He outperformed all of your favorite wide receivers. He crushed Diggs the last 7 weeks of the season. Designed runs, everything that you could possibly name. This dude was in full effect. Couple injuries at the end here. He was in the middle of a monster game last week, but got knocked out of that game as well. But Jaden Reed is a guy, 202 fantasy points, and I don't even think he really played an entire season. I guess he kind of was in the mix all the season. I thought he kind of came on. He really came on late, but I just think he's going to be a name come the offseason that we're really going to talk a lot about. So I like Jaden Reed a lot. I think that's probably my favorite riser for next year. Just a young guy, a lot of talent. I like it.
Yeah, I feel like this is tough because there's going to be a lot of risers. There was a lot of waiver wire heroes this year. Don't you guys agree? I got a guy who's injured quite a bit, but when he gets the ball, he's explosive. I got to mention Devon Achane. So almost 1,000 all-purpose yards. He was hurt a big chunk of the year. 10 touchdowns. The sprinter. When this guy gets the ball, he makes plays. Especially Mostert. He had a heck of a year. I know he has tread left, but do they want to give this young talent a lot more touches and see what he can do? I think he's a riser.
I respect that.
Yeah, I think he's a riser too. Do you want to get him all the touches? No, he already just got hurt. Then when came back from injury, he got hurt again. So no, I don't think you give him all the touches. I think you continue that split because Mostert is fine carrying the load, it looks like, but at least go 50-50. So
I
We're
think-
talking riser in the draft.
oh yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't picked in a lot of leagues.
No, I agree with that. I agree. Like I said, I think he's going to rise this year, but I don't think, like you said, about giving him the workload. I don't agree with that.
Give me
I
one more.
think this year is going to absolutely break fantasy moving forward for next year because there were
It's
simply
going to be
so
the
many.
year of the running back. Watch.
It's just this was the year of lightning in the bottle. I mean, your top guys were just waiver wire merchants. I mean, Kyron Williams, unless you drafted him ridiculously late, probably saved your entire season and is going to be probably a first-round guy next year. Puka Nacua, same thing. If you drafted him, it was God late, or you picked him up off waivers. Jaden Reed. Who else, dude? There's just the list goes on and on. These guys that were just waiver wire here. Achin, if you drafted him, it was because you were either a Miami Dolphins fan or you just took a flyer on a fun name at the end of the draft. Like, there was a lot of hype about his speed in college, but he's buried in the depth chart behind, I mean, seemingly at the beginning of the year, Jeff Wilson and Mostert. And then obviously Wilson was a non-factor all season, but I don't think we're going to see another year like this where you can just pick guys off the street and they just dominate in fantasy. This was
Crazy
ridiculous value this year. And these guys are going to get ballooned on ADPs, I think. I think the values are going to be crazy come the first drop.
Yeah, moving on to some of my risers. You kind of named them there in your little rant there. But Puka and Kyron Williams, I was going to ask you guys, where are you going to take them next year? I know we hit on Puka a little bit. You think Kyron's going to be a first-round pick?
I do.
I don't.
I do because think of how Cam Akers was revered this year for
Not
no
by me.
reason. I know I was off that train as well, but Cam Akers got so much praise for not really doing much. Kyron Williams almost led the league in rushing, and he did it with how many games did he miss? Missed a handful of games, and his usage rate was just ridiculous this year. So I'm a big fan, but I do think that he is going to get just press like you wouldn't believe this offseason. I think there's going to be crazy praise for him. Young. Yeah.
I'm saying like late second, early third.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to go beyond on 2. I really don't.
Oh, you just said he's going first round.
I know. I think he's going to go first round, but I don't think he goes past the second. I don't think there's any chance.
Yeah, I could see too. I know his value though is going straight up.
I think it's just going to be so high. I'm still sticking 0 RB build through and through.
We talked about these next two as well here. Jordan Love, your boy badge. Where's he getting drafted?
So I'm not reaching on Jordan Love again, but I mean quarterbacks. My strategy. I go quarterbacks late, like really late. Where's he going? I guess it depends on your league. Is it 4 points, 6 points standard? It just all depends. I don't know. That's a tough one. Will he get a starting job on someone's roster? Yes, but I don't know where.
I bet he's going to be on Bainey's roster next year. I can just guarantee it. I see it all over his face. He wants all the love he can get.
I think I'm going to take a gamble this year, boys. I'm in a keeper league, and you keep at drafted evaluation. I just picked him up off the waiver wire after the season ended. Anthony Richardson, drafted in the 9th round in our league. So I'm still debating it. Haven't pressed the K yet. Haven't submitted it, but I don't know, man. At that Shane Steichen, we saw what he did with Jalen Hurts. If Anthony Richardson could stay healthy, that's a big gamble. But 9th round, I don't know. How do you feel about that? I mean, we saw a small sample size at the beginning of the year. Am I crazy to lock him in as my keeper?
I mean,
I don't think so. Depending on your roster.
Well,
You
it's
could
one
get some
keeper,
points.
1 year. One keeper, 1 year. That's kind of what the agreed upon status is right now. I prefer 3 keepers, but we're at 1.
Yeah, where did you draft everybody else? Is kind of what I'm saying. Like, do you have any ones you're kind of iffy with?
Jamar's expired. So that was my first round keeper this year. I have Amon Ra in the second round. And then I don't think I'm keeping Keenan. Yeah, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm stuck between Amon Ra and Anthony Richardson, I think.
I think Richardson's a good keep.
That late, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, these rushing quarterbacks, I think they're going to go really early. I mean, we just saw 2 of the top 5 guys are rushing quarterbacks this year. So if I can get one that's a lot younger and a fun little offense, I don't know, man. I'm flirting with it. But how do
Put
we
some points
feel,
up.
Badge? How do we feel about Baker? Because I owe a big apology to Baker.
Shaker.
Godwin and Evans might both finish the year with 1,000 yards receiving. We wrote off both those receivers on our fades list at the beginning of the year. Both guys have been Godwin more so the last few weeks have really caught on. Evans career year. Baker Mayfield going to go late in those drafts next year, or is he just going to kind of get the same treatment he always gets come draft day?
I think he's going to get the same treatment, but I'll give him props for balling out, especially his situation in Cleveland. I was so happy when he left the division because that dude brings some fire. Teague knows I tell him all the time. I loved when he was gone because that fire and energy he brought to those fans. But yeah, I think he's going to get the same treatment. I mean, there's so many quarterbacks in fantasy, that you can. Like I said, I go quarterback late in my leagues. So heck of a baller this year he was. I'll give him props. Baker, if you're listening.
Yeah, I think Shaker's gonna get some love and he's gonna get drafted. He's probably gonna be, I would say, maybe start on some people's rosters, like borderline start, and obviously backup.
2 QB leagues, you super flex psychos, you'll probably be.
Or depending on how late
Find
you
some
draft
value
them, like
there.
Badge says, Badge likes to be a psycho and draft all these guys late. We actually had a guy in our league. He drafted 2 QBs very, very late. They happen to be who? Sam Howell and Brock Purdy, both gunslingers. So
Where I got Dak Prescott too.
that's
I
my
got
next
him
one.
super late.
That's
in
my
our
next
12
one
man.
I wanted to talk about. My riser was Dak. So where do you
Rightfully
think
so.
Dak gonna rise to here?
Higher than I'm willing to take him, but I think with the year he's put together, though, I mean, he's kind of earned it. He went on a crazy tear for a while there. But yeah, his evaluation this year was probably the lowest it'll probably be. Mike McCarthy, Kellen Moore was gone. Just a lot of question marks, but he balled out, man. He had a great year. I got nothing bad to say about Dak. If we play him in the playoffs, then I'll find some mean things to say. But that being said, man, yeah, wherever you take him, feel good about it. We had guys in our league, they dropped him after the first couple weeks. They just were like, no, I can't do it. And then he just, boom, to the moon the rest of the year. So made them look foolish.
I'm trying to find out where I got him last year. T, can you pull that up quick, or do you have to dig for it?
What are you talking about?
Oh, Dak. Okay, here we go. I got Dak in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th. 8th round, I got Dak in our league. So that's exactly why I wait on quarterbacks. You're going to be able to get him. But yeah, I think he's gonna rise up to the 5th. Unless you got those crazy players in your league that reach for quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, it happens. That's why we're here. That's why we do mock drafts. That's why we do everything.
We're definitely going to do more mock drafts this season. That was a lot of fun. We had a good time doing that. We obviously had D-Bro in there. It was a great time. Nice to go head-to-head, hear his opinion on things, hear him roast Mike about missing the shot clock twice, taking a defense in the 5th round. That was fun.
And I still killed it.
But that does wrap up this episode. Boys, the fantasy season might be over, but we're going to keep continuing on here. We're going to go on to DFS for the rest of the playoffs here. We're going to talk playoffs. We're going to probably game by game. We'll talk game, our thoughts on the games until the Super Bowl, boys. So stay with us, man. We appreciate all the love, support. Please hit that subscribe button. It is totally free. It doesn't cost a single penny to do it. Also, our partners at where, Badge?
Underdog Fantasy. Download the app. They will match up to $100 on your first deposit. If it's free, it's for me. Use promo code LetThem
But thank you guys again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Let 'Em Know Fantasy Football Podcast. Join our community and follow us on all socials, or keep up with the episodes on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.